Hey, what's up? I'm Adamo if you're new here, and if you're returning, then you know what's good. Today I want to talk about my experience working in Japan and really all that I gained from this experience. Now, it might seem a little tone deaf because of course right now we can't actually travel as freely as we once could, but this is going to come to an end and you're going to want to think about, how you can start exploring the world again and getting the most out of those trips. Now, I was teaching in Japan for 6 weeks in summer last year, so summer 2019, and it was honestly one of the best experiences of my life. I was teaching a 1 week intensive program, so 6 weeks, but doing the same course every single week, teaching it to different students. And so for that reason, I was in 3 locations. I was in Tokyo, Okinawa, and Shizuoka. And so in this video, like I said, we're just gonna be talking about all the pros of that experience. And so if you want to know more about that, then keep watching. Like the video, if you enjoy it, subscribe. And yeah, let's get into it. I will say, in case you're interested in a specific program that I was on, I was with a company called Coursework out Japan. So they recruit from the top universities in the UK, US, and I believe Canada. And yeah, they kind of just fly us out there and take care of all of our expenses whilst we provide our service, which is, teaching English, sharing information about UK, US, and Canadian universities, and just sharing a bit about where we want to go in life, like our dreams, and encouraging the children to do the same. Okay, so the first pro about working in Japan was it allowed me to explore one of the most amazing countries I've ever been to without dipping into my savings, right? And that's obviously one of the big pluses of the work travel model, right? Even if it's not teaching, whatever it is, if you exchange your services whilst you're out there in these countries, then you don't have to rely so heavily on saving up. I don't know how much it would cost me to live in Japan for 6 weeks, but I'm telling you, as a student, I didn't have it, right? I definitely didn't have enough money to be in Tokyo for 3 weeks, then to fly to Okinawa, the island, then to fly back to Shizuoka, then get the bullet. Listen, I didn't have it. And yet, because I was able to provide a service, I was able to just explore so much of the country. It's something I've always wanted to do because I've always been very interested in the narrative surrounding Japan. There's this, very advanced state, but that is still culturally quite rooted, right? And so I wanted to see this in action. This is like, there's a shrine pretty much everywhere you go in Japan, like, sweetie, everywhere. And so it was exciting to see that come alive. And the thing is, if you pick the right program, then as much as your flights, accommodation, living expenses, and activities like, Japanese language lessons and snorkeling can become included. And that's the lucky break that I got. I say lucky break, I went through like a 3-step application process, but yeah, that's what I mean by that. And so of course you're going to be working, so some of your time is going to be exchanged there, but then I had evenings and weekends to explore, in which we did a lot of that. So from exploring bars and like some bit of the nightlife on weekends to just like really good spots to eat, the fluffy pancakes, that's a staple, but also just some of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen, and Okinawa ice cream, which I don't even eat dairy. I had 2 ice creams that day. I had 2. Another amazing thing about my time teaching in Japan was that I was attached to a host family for 1 week in Okinawa. So the school I was staying at, some of the students offered to be host families. Guys, this was probably the best part of my whole trip in Japan. Like, I was immersed in the Okinawan culture. Like, I got to know about the food, they took me to festivals, I saw the castle. Like, there was just so much going on that, again, I wouldn't have been able to see, not from that angle had I gone on my own. And so I implore people, if possible, like the setup, I don't know, I'm not gonna lie, the program set that up, and so they niced me. But if you can get a chance to stay with a host family, I think it's a great way to really get deeper into a culture and learn a lot more. I must say, in general, Japanese people are probably the nicest group of people I've ever come across. Now, I haven't gone to Canada, and apparently Canadians are like the nicest people in the world. I don't know about that. I just know Japan, they're amazing. Like, they're so kind, they're so polite. They'll go out their way to help you. Like, I remember one time, the language barrier was obviously there. In case you didn't know, I don't speak any Japanese. And I was trying to get somewhere, and this guy was trying to give me directions, but his English wasn't great. My Japanese wasn't great. He walked me all the way there. It was about a 15-minute walk to where I want to go. Do you think anyone in the UK is going to walk me 15 minutes to where I want to go? No. And those acts of kindness happen everywhere. Like, people will go out their way to help you. The reception that I received from the Japanese people in those interactions was really refreshing, especially because I'd been traveling around Asia before I got to Japan, and one of the countries that I went to was Vietnam. Now, this is a beautiful country, like, again, one of my favorite places that I visited, but I didn't always have the most positive interactions with the people there, like, and really that's because, you know, traveling whilst black is an extreme sport at times. I mean, people were trying to take pictures of me without my permission. They were pointing, then people were laughing, they were saying things like I didn't even understand half the time. Like, some of the things could have been nice, but some of it it wasn't giving me the right vibe. Like, you don't have to understand the language sometimes to understand that I don't really feel like they talk in some nice stuff, like their body language, the tone of voice and stuff like that. So I met some amazing people in Vietnam and got some really good vibes, but I also didn't get great vibes at times. So coming to Japan and I can't say that I had a bad interaction, except this one time. There was only one occasion I had a bad time in Japan, and that was when somebody followed me. That was scary. But other than that, it was great. Another pro about being in Japan and being attached to this program was that I was around a lot of like-minded people. So like I said earlier, they recruit from the top UK, US and Canadian universities. So that meant I spent a lot of time around very ambitious, intelligent, really quite funny people. And so it just made the whole experience so much more enjoyable. But also it's a great form of networking. Like, some of these people are going to go on to do amazing things, and it'd be great to be connected and still be inspired by them. And I've made friends, like, wow, that sounded really weird, like I don't usually make friends. But I've made friends with people who like live in New York. One of my friends was supposed to come over before the coronavirus shut down, you know, general air travel. She was supposed to come and stay with me, but when everything is back on track, I'm sure that'll be going on, and I'll be going over to New York and have someone, you know, to stay with, to show me around. And so it's just great. It's just great to have people across the pond, really, that you can interact with and learn from. And that was all from that experience teaching and working in Japan. So even if you don't do this particular program, if you go abroad and go to Japan and you work and there are people who are from different parts of the world, they're likely to be like-minded in some capacity, like enough so that they were moving from whatever country to Japan. That's a common thing to bond on right there and then. But they're also someone who's obviously into exploration. They're probably ambitious type of people, and so leveraging that to build your network and just make good friends, I think that's a great part. So another pro of working and teaching in Japan was learning about the country firsthand from the youth, because obviously I was spending so much time with high school students. Those were the ones that we were teaching. We had so much dialogue about things that were going on in Japan and things that were the forefront of their mind, like gender inequality. I didn't know that was such a big issue in Japan. I didn't know that, of course, they were so conscious about Japan's very homogenous society and ways they can integrate and encourage, you know, people from across the world to come to Japan to work, because they have issues of their aging population. And so how they can kind of counterbalance that in the long term so that Japan doesn't end up with, you know, issues surrounding their economy being propped up by a small portion of youth. But anyway, that's another topic, and this isn't a geography lesson. So as well as interacting with the students, spent a lot of time interacting with like the teaching assistants who were often more our own age. And so getting to know about Japan from their view and them telling us, recommending spots to go to and things like that was really good. You get to see more of Japan when you connect with kind of the people who live there, who breathe it, who that's an everyday experience. But also the students and the teaching assistants took us to like festivals, local festivals. Guys, it was just so good. I would never have experienced that on my own. I know I wouldn't have. Another thing that might sound kind of cringy, but I learned a lot about myself and resilience on this trip. Like, obviously we were living separately, so it's not like we was all living in this like one big hotel or anything. We were living and working in Japan, so commuting and stuff like that. And I learned a lot about myself, how I could adapt really quickly, because damn, I mean, Japan is an easy place to adapt to in terms of the transport systems are amazing, you know, the facilities are amazing. Everything just runs so smoothly and it's so safe. Oh my gosh, Japan is like one of the safest places, I think, to travel in the world and just be like, I was just walking at night from the station to where I was living at the time, like it was nothing. I'm more scared to walk in London than I am to a place that I'd been in for about 10 days and I was like, yeah, cool, no problem. You know, these are my ends now. I think the final pro about working in Japan and teaching is now that I'm back, and whenever somebody has my CV or an interview, it is something that they always pick out. They always pick out, say, this is really interesting. You spent 6 weeks in Japan. Like, tell us about that. You was working in Japan. And I think the two reasons why this is so appealing to employers is, one, it is pretty much the height of adaptability if you can go to another country, especially a country that is so different to the one that you're from. Like, it's one thing if you move from like England to Wales, but it's another thing if you move from like England all the way to Japan. And so yes, it's kind of like the height of adaptability. And the other thing is obviously communication. That's always a really big thing that they talk about when you're at jobs, like communicating within teams, communicating with clients, and there is no further or bigger test, I think, than trying to communicate with someone who there is no really common language. So they might know a tiny bit of English, I know absolutely no Japanese, and you've got to try and work out different ways to communicate these ideas. And so that's something that I can talk about all the time when someone brings up, you know, in the interview, so what's your main skills that you have or whatever. I think all in all, that's what I can say about the experience in itself. I could talk so much about like individual events that happened, but I won't delve deeper into that now. I think working abroad is something that everyone should do at some point in their life if possible. I just think the experience will really change your outlook on life. Like, that's been my first time on the Asian continent, like that particular trip, and it was just like so eye-opening. There's so much going on everywhere. Like, you can get kind of lost or like stuck in your bubble of I live in London, or I live in here, I live in there, and forget that there's things going on everywhere. Like, things are popping off everywhere. And so damn, if I knew Japanese, I would 100% live in Japan for like a year easy if I could get a job and, you know, I was fluent in the language. It's kind of a barrier, but I'm sure there's still ways that you can do it. Of course, I've seen some people that I watch on YouTube who live out there and they, you know, they don't speak Japanese. But yeah, I can definitely say that I'll be going back at some point. I'll definitely be going back. So I do just want to interject to make it clear that this whole experience wasn't like a walk in the park, right? Like, teaching in another country where you don't speak the language is challenging, right? Working 9 to 5 and teaching 9 to 5, which is a very intense thing to do, can be draining. And so while some evenings you do go out and explore and it's amazing, sometimes you just want to crash and go to sleep. And I did that quite a lot as well. So I just want to normalize that the whole process isn't like roses all the time. So that's it. That's me kind of going into the pros of really being in Japan and working and teaching there. And if you enjoyed the video, like it, you know what to do. Comment if you want to go to Japan, or you know you've been to Japan. Comment your favorite thing about Japan, where you're trying to go in Japan, what you're trying to do when all of this is over. And yeah, that's it.